Chapter 45. Krishna recovers the son of his teacher. When Lord Krishna saw Vasudeva and Devaki standing in a reverential attitude, he immediately expanded his influence of Yogamaya so that they could treat him and Balaram as children. As in the material world, the relationship existing between father and mother and children can be established amongst different living entities by the influence of the illusory energy. So, by the influence of Yogamaya, the devotee can establish a relationship in which the Supreme Personality of Godhead is his child. After creating this situation by his Yogamaya, Kṛṣṇa, appearing with his elder brother Balaram as the most illustrious son in the dynasty of the Sattvatas, very submissively and respectfully addressed Vasudeva and Devaki. My dear father and mother, although you have always been anxious for the protection of our lives, you could not enjoy the pleasure of having us as your babies, as your growing boys, and as your adolescent youths. Krishna indirectly praised the fatherhood of Nanda Maharaj and motherhood of Yashoda as most glorious because although he and Balaram were not their born sons, Nanda and Yashoda actually enjoyed their childhood pastimes. By nature's own arrangement, the childhood of the embodied living being is enjoyed by his parents. Even in the animal kingdom, parents are found to be affectionate to their cubs. Being captivated by the activities of their offspring, they take much care for their well-being. As for Vasudeva and Devaki, they were always anxious for the protection of their sons, Kṛṣṇa and Balaram. That is why Kṛṣṇa, after his appearance, was immediately transferred to another's house. Balarama was also transferred from Devaki's womb to Rohini's womb. Vasudeva and Devaki were full of anxieties for Krishna's and Balaram's protection, but they could not enjoy their childhood pastimes. Krishna said, "Unfortunately, being ordered by our fate, we could not be raised by our own parents to enjoy childhood pleasures at home. My dear father and mother, a man cannot repay his debt to his parents, from whom he gets this body, which can bestow upon him all the benefits of material existence. According to the Vedic injunctions, this human form of life enables one to perform all kinds of religious activities, fulfill all kinds of desires, and acquire all kinds of wealth. And only in this human form is there every possibility that one can get liberation from material existence. This body is produced by the combined efforts of the father and mother. Every human being should be obliged to his parents and understand that he cannot repay his debt to them. If, after growing up, a son does not try to satisfy his parents by his actions or by an endowment of riches, he is surely punished after death by the superintendent of death and made to eat his own flesh. If a person is able to care for or give protection to old parents, a chaste wife, children, the spiritual master, brahmanas, and other dependents, but does not do so, he is considered already dead, although he is supposedly breathing. My dear father and mother, you have always been anxious for our protection, but unfortunately, we could not render any service to you. Until now, we have simply wasted our time. Due to reasons beyond our control, we could not serve you. Mother and Father, please excuse us for our sinfulness. When the Supreme Personality of Godhead was speaking as an innocent boy in very sweet words, Vasudeva and Devaki became captivated by parental affection and embraced him with great pleasure. They were amazed and could not speak or answer the words of Kṛṣna, but simply embraced him and Balaram in great affection and remained silent, shedding incessant tears. Thus, having consoled his father and mother, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing as the beloved son of Devaki, approached his grandfather Ugrasena and announced that Ugrasena would now be the king of the Yadu kingdom. Kamsa had been forcibly ruling the kingdom of Yadu in spite of the presence of his father, whom he had arrested. But after the death of Kamsa, his father was released and announced to be the monarch of the Yadu kingdom. It appears that in those days in the western part of India, there were many small kingdoms ruled by the Yadu dynasty, Andhaka dynasty, Vrishni dynasty, and Bhoja dynasty. Maharaj Ugrasena belonged to the Bhoja dynasty. Therefore, Kṛṣna indirectly declared that the king of the Bhoja dynasty would be the emperor of the other small kingdoms. Kṛṣna willingly asked Maharaj Ugrasena to rule over himself and Balaram because they were his subjects. The word praja is used both for progeny and for citizens, so Kṛṣna belonged to the praja, both as a grandson of Maharaj Ugrasena's and as a member of the Yadu dynasty. Thus, he voluntarily accepted the rule of Maharaj Ugrasena. He informed Ugrasena, "Being cursed by Yayati, the kings of the Yadu dynasty may not occupy the throne. It will be our pleasure to act as your servants. My full cooperation with you will make your position more exalted and secure, so that the kings of other dynasties will not hesitate to pay their respective revenues. Protected by me, you will be honored even by the demigods from the heavenly planets. My dear grandfather, out of fear of my late uncle Kamsa, all the kings belonging to the Yadu, Vrishni, Andhaka, Madhu, Dasharha, and Kukura dynasties were very anxious and disturbed. Now you can pacify them all and give them assurance of security. The whole kingdom will be peaceful." All the kings in the neighboring area had left their homes in fear of Kamsa and were living in distant parts of the country. Now, after the death of Kamsa and the reinstallment of Ugrasena as king, the neighboring kings were given all kinds of presentations and comforts. Then they returned to their respective homes. After this nice political arrangement, the citizens of Mathura were pleased to live in Mathura, being protected by the strong arms of Kṛṣna and Balaram. On account of good governance in the presence of Kṛṣna and Balaram, the inhabitants of Mathura felt complete satisfaction in the fulfillment of all their material desires and necessities, and because they saw Kṛṣna and Balaram daily, face to face, they soon forgot all material miseries completely. As soon as they saw Kṛṣna and Balaram coming out on the street, very nicely dressed and smiling, and looking at the citizens with grace, the citizens were immediately filled with loving ecstasies simply by seeing the personal presence of Mukunda. The name Mukunda refers to one who can award liberation and transcendental bliss. Krishna's presence acted as such a vitalizing tonic that not only the younger generation, but even the old men of Mathura became fully invigorated with youthful energy and strength by regularly seeing him. Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda were also living in Mathura because Krishna and Balaram were there. But after some time, they wanted to go back to Vrindavana. Krishna and Balarama went before Nanda and Yashoda and very affectionately embraced them. And then the two lords spoke as follows. Dear father and mother, although we were born of Vasudeva and Devaki, you have been our real father and mother, because from our very birth and childhood you raised us with great affection and love. Your affectionate love for us was more than anyone can offer one's own children. You are actually our father and mother because you raised us as your own children when we were just like orphans. For certain reasons, we were rejected by our father and mother, and you protected us. Dear father and mother, we know that you will feel separation upon returning to Vrindavana and leaving us here. But please rest assured that we shall come back to Vrindavan just after giving some satisfaction to our real father and mother, Vasudeva and Devaki, and our grandfather and other family members. Krishna and Balaram thus satisfied Nanda and Yashoda by sweet words and by presentations of various kinds of clothing, ornaments, and copper utensils. They satisfied them along with their friends and neighbors who had come with them from Vrindavan to Mathura as fully as possible. On account of excessive parental affection for Balaram and Krishna, Nanda Maharaj felt tears in his eyes and he embraced them and started with the cowherd men for Vrindavan. After this, Vasudeva had his sons initiated by sacred thread as the token of second birth, which is essential for the higher castes of human society. Vasudeva called for his family priest and learned brahmanas, and the sacred thread ceremony of Krsṇa and Balarama was duly performed. During this ceremony, Vasudeva gave various ornaments in charity to the brahmanas and endowed them with cows decorated with silken clothes and golden ornaments. Then Vasudeva remembered the cows that he had wanted to give in charity to the brahmanas after the birth of Krsṇa and Balaram. But being imprisoned by Kamsa at that time, Vasudeva had been able to do so only within his mind, for Kamsa had stolen all his cows. With the death of Kamsa, his cows were released, and now Vasudeva gave the actual cows to the brahmanas. Then Balarama and Krishna were duly initiated with the sacred thread ceremony, and they repeated the chanting of the Gayatri mantra. The Gayatri mantra is offered to disciples after the sacred thread ceremony, and Balarama and Krishna properly discharged the duties of chanting this mantra. Anyone who executes the chanting of this mantra has to abide by certain principles and vows. Although Balaram and Krishna are transcendental personalities, they strictly followed the regulative principles. They were initiated by their family priest, Gargacharya, usually known as Gargamuni, the Acharya of the Yadu dynasty. According to Vedic culture, every respectable family has an Acharya, or spiritual master. One is not considered a perfectly cultured man without being initiated and trained by an acharya. It is said, therefore, that one who has approached an acharya is actually in perfect knowledge. Lord Krishna and Balaram are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the master of all education and knowledge. There was no need for them to accept a spiritual master or acharya. Yet, for the instruction of ordinary men, they also accepted a spiritual master for advancement in spiritual knowledge. It is customary, after being initiated in the Gayatri mantra, for one to live away from home for some time under the care of the acharya, to be trained in spiritual life. During this period, one has to work under the spiritual master as an ordinary menial servant. There are many rules and regulations for a brahmachari living under the care of an acharya, and Krishna and Balaram strictly follow those regulative principles while living under the instruction of their spiritual master Sandipani Muni, who was a resident of Avantipura in the northern Indian district of Ujjain. According to scriptural injunctions, a spiritual master should be respected and regarded on an equal level with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna and Balaram exactly followed those principles with great devotion and underwent the regulations of brahmacharya. Thus, they satisfied their spiritual master, who instructed them in Vedic knowledge. Being very satisfied, Sandipani Muni instructed them in all the intricacies of Vedic wisdom and in supplementary literatures such as the Upanishads. Because Krishna and Balaram happened to be Kshatriyas, they were specifically trained in military science, politics, and ethics. Politics includes such departments of knowledge as how to make peace, how to fight, how to pacify, how to divide and rule, and how to give shelter. All these items were fully explained and instructed to Krishna and Balaram. The ocean is the source of water in a river. The cloud is created by the evaporation of ocean water, and the same water is distributed as rain all over the surface of the earth and then returns to the ocean in rivers. So, Krishna and Balaram, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, are the source of all knowledge, but because they were playing like ordinary human beings, they set the example so that everyone would receive knowledge from the right source. Thus, they agreed to take knowledge from a spiritual master. After hearing only once from their teacher, Krishna and Balaram learned all the arts and sciences. In 64 days and 64 nights, they learned all the necessary arts and sciences required in human society. During the daytime, they took lessons on a subject from the teacher, and by nightfall, they were expert in that department of knowledge. First of all, they learned how to sing, how to compose songs, and how to recognize the different tunes. They learned the favorable and unfavorable accents and meters, how to sing different kinds of rhythms and melodies, and how to follow them by beating different kinds of drums. They learned how to dance to the rhythm of melody and different songs. They learned how to write dramas, and they learned the various types of painting, from simple village arts up to the highest perfectional stage. They also learned how to paint tilaka on the face by making different kinds of dots on the forehead and cheeks. Then they learned the art of making paintings on the floor with a liquid paste of rice and flour. Such paintings are very popular at auspicious ceremonies performed at household affairs or in the temple. They learned how to make a resting place with flowers, and how to decorate clothing and limbs with colorful paintings. They also learned how to set valuable jewels in ornaments. They learned the art of ringing water pots. Water pots are filled with water to a certain measurement so that as one beats on the pots, different tones are produced, and when the pots are beaten together, they produce a melodious sound. They also learned how to splash water in the rivers or lakes while taking a bath among friends. They learned how to decorate with flowers. This art of decorating can still be seen in various temples of Vrindavan during the summer season. It is called Pulabadi. The dais, the throne, the walls, the ceiling are all fully decorated, and a small aromatic fountain of flowers is fixed in the center. Because of these floral decorations, the people, fatigued from the heat of the summer, become refreshed. But Krishna and Balaram learned the art of dressing hair in various styles and fixing a helmet in different positions on the head. They also learned how to set up a theatrical stage, how to decorate dramatic actors with costumes and with flower ornaments over the ear, and how to sprinkle sandalwood pulp and water to produce a nice fragrance. They also learned the art of performing magical feats. Within the magical field, there is an art called Bahurupi, by which a person dresses himself in such a way that when he approaches a friend, he cannot be recognized. Krishna and Balaram also learned how to make various syrups and beverages required at various times, having various tastes and intoxicating effects. They also learned different types of sewing and embroidery work, as well as how to manipulate thin threads for dancing puppets. This art includes how to string wires on musical instruments such as the veena, sitar, esaraj, and tambura to produce melodious sounds. Then they learned how to make and solve riddles. They learned the art of how even a dull student can very quickly learn the alphabet and read books. Then they learned how to rehearse and act out a drama. They also studied the art of solving crossword puzzles, filling up the missing spaces, and making complete words. They also learned how to draw and read pictographic literature. In some countries in the world, pictographic literature is still current. A story is represented by pictures. For instance, a man and a house are pictured to represent a man going home. Krishna and Balaram also learned the art of architecture, how to construct residential buildings. They learned to recognize valuable jewels by studying their luster and colors. Then they learned the art of placing jewels in a gold and silver setting so that they look very beautiful. They also learned how to study soil to find minerals. This study of soil is now a greatly specialized science, but formerly it was common knowledge even for the ordinary man. They learned to study herbs and plants to discover how they would act as medicine for different ailments. By studying the different species of plants, they learned how to crossbreed plants and trees and get different types of fruits. They learned how to train and engage rams and cocks in fighting for sport. They then learned how to teach parrots to speak and to answer the questions of human beings. They learned practical psychology, how to influence another's mind and thus induce another to act according to one's own desire. Sometimes this is called hypnotism. They learned how to wash hair, dye it different colors, and curl it in different ways. They learned the art of telling what is written in someone's book without actually seeing it. They learned to tell what is contained in another's fist. Sometimes children imitate this art, although not very accurately. One child keeps something within his fist and asks his friend, "Can you tell me what is within?" And the friend gives some suggestion, although he actually cannot tell. But there is an art by which one can understand and actually tell what is held within the fist. Krishna and Balaram learned how to speak and understand the languages of various countries. Not only did they learn the languages of human beings, Krishna could also speak even with the animals and birds. Evidence of this is found in the Vaishnav literature compiled by the Goswamis. Then they learned how to make carriages and airplanes from flowers. It is said in the Ramayana that after defeating Ravana, Ramachandra was carried from Lanka to Bharatavarsha on a plane of flowers called a Pushparatha. Krishna and Balaram then learned the art of foretelling events by seeing signs. In a book called Kannada Vachana, the various types of signs and omens are described. If when one is going out one sees someone with a bucket full of water, that is a very good sign. But if one sees someone with an empty bucket, it is not a good sign. Similarly, if one sees a cow being milked alongside its calf, it is a good sign. The result of understanding these signs is that one can foretell events, and Krishna and Balaram learned the science. They also learned the art of composing matrika. A matrika is like a crossword box with 3 numbers in each row. If one adds any 3 from any side, it will come to 9. The matrakas are of different kinds and for different purposes. Krishna and Balaram learned the art of cutting valuable stones such as diamonds, and they also learned the art of questioning and answering by immediately composing poetry within the mind. They learned the science of the action and reaction of physical combinations and permutations. They learned the art of a psychiatrist who can understand the psychic movements of another person. They learned how to satisfy one's desires. Desires are very difficult to fulfill, but if one desires something which is unreasonable and can never be fulfilled, the desire can be subdued and satisfied, and that is an art. By this art, one can also subdue sex impulses when they are aroused, as they are even in brahmachari life. By this art, one can make even an enemy one's friend or transfer the direct action of a physical element to other things. Lord Krishna and Balaram, the reservoir of all knowledge, exhibited their perfect understanding of all the arts and sciences mentioned above. Then, they offered to serve their spiritual master by awarding him anything he desired. This offering by the student to the teacher or spiritual master is called Guru Dakshina. It is essential that a student satisfy the teacher in return for any learning received, either material or spiritual. When Krishna and Balaram offered their service in this way, the teacher Sandipani Muni thought it wise to ask them for something extraordinary, something no common student could offer. He therefore consulted with his wife about what to ask from them. He and his wife had already seen the extraordinary potencies of Krishna and Balaram and could understand that the two boys were the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They decided to ask for the return of their son, who had drowned in the ocean near the shore at Prabhasa Kshetra. When Krishna and Balaram heard from their teacher about the death of his son, they immediately started for Prabhasa Kshetra on their chariot. Reaching the beach, they asked the controlling deity of the ocean to return the son of their teacher. The ocean deity immediately appeared before the Lord and offered him all respectful obeisances with great humility. The Lord said, "Some time back you caused the drowning of the son of our teacher. I order you to return him." The ocean deity replied, "The boy was not actually taken by me, but was captured by a demon named Panchajana. This great demon generally remains deep in the water in the shape of a conch shell. The son of your teacher might be within the belly of the demon, having been devoured by him." On hearing this, Krishna dove deep into the water and caught hold of the demon Panchajana. He killed him on the spot, but could not find the son of his teacher within his belly. Therefore, he took the demon's dead body, in the shape of a conch shell, and returned to his chariot on the beach of Prabhasa Kshetra. From there he started for Samyamani, the residence of Yamaraj, the superintendent of death. Accompanied by his elder brother Balaram, who is also known as Halayuda, Krishna arrived there and blew on his conch shell. Hearing the vibration, Yamaraj appeared and received Sri Krishna with all respectful obeisances. Yamaraj could understand who Krishna and Balaram were, and therefore he immediately offered his humble service to the Lord. Krishna had appeared on the surface of the earth like an ordinary human being, but actually Krishna and Balaram are the super soul living within the heart of every living entity. They are Vishnu himself, but were playing just like ordinary human boys. When Yamaraj offered his services to the Lord, Sri Krishna asked him to return his teacher's son, who had come to him as a result of his work. "Considering my ruling supreme," said Krishna, "you should immediately return the son of my teacher." Yamaraj returned the boy to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Krishna and Balaram brought him to his father. The brothers asked if their teacher had anything more to ask from them, but he replied, "My dear sons, you have done enough for me. I am now completely satisfied. What further want can there be for a man who has disciples like you? My dear boys, you may now go home. These glorious acts of yours will always be renowned all over the world. You are above all blessing, yet it is my duty to bless you. I therefore give you the benediction that whatever you speak will remain as eternally fresh as the instructions of the Vedas. Your teachings will be honored not only within this universe or in this millennium, but in all places and ages, and will remain increasingly new and important." Due to this benediction from his teacher, Lord Krishna's Bhagavad Gita is ever increasingly fresh and is renowned not only within this universe, but in other planets and other universes also. Being ordered by their teacher, Krishna and Balaram immediately returned home on their chariot. They traveled at great speed, like the wind, and made sounds like the crashing of clouds. All the residents of Mathura, who had not seen Krishna and Balaram for a long time, were very much pleased to see them again. They felt joyful like a person who has regained his lost property. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 45th chapter of Kṛṣṇa. Krishna recovers the son of his teacher.
Hare Krishna. You have that, I didn't bring my phone. Do you have that chapter? Oh, that's Om Jnana Timirantasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupakoda Mahyam Tatati Shapadantikam Vandehang Shri Guru Shri Jatapadakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Shagrajatam Sahagana Raganatan Vitam Stam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lolita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kamshana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hodi Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Pyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. After the death of Kamsa, we saw that Vasudeva and Devaki stood before Lord Krishna in a reverential mood, but the Lord wanted to exchange with them in their natural position as his parents. So he expanded his yoga maya so that they could think of him and Balaram as their son. And Prabhupada says by the illusory energy, this relationship is established in the material world. This is my father, this is my mother, these are my children. So by the spiritual energy, similar relationships are established on the spiritual platform. Then the Krishna and Balaram spoke or Krishna actually is speaking, very sweetly to Vasudeva and Devaki. This is a quality of speech in the mode of goodness. Satyam priyahitam chayat. to say something which is true and also pleasing. Sometimes we say something that's pleasing but not true, or true but not pleasing, but a person of high quality can say something that's true and pleasing both. So Krishna is ideal in this respect. He spoke so sweetly both to Vasudeva and Devaki and later to Nanda Yashoda. So he expressed sorrow that he couldn't, that they were not able, that Vasudeva and Devaki weren't able to enjoy the childhood of Krishna and Balaram. And Prabhupada said indirectly this praises the parenthood of Nanda and Yashoda, who actually were able to enjoy that childhood. Significantly, there's a debt that's a son especially owes the parents, or child owes the parents. The son especially, every human being in fact, Prabhupada says, owes a debt. And especially the son has to try to satisfy the parents. This, in the modern world, this is so attenuated or lost, but this is a sign of any culture worthy of the name, especially the Vedic culture, that there's respect and gratitude extended to parents and other superiors from whom we get so much benefit. And it's our duty to try to see to their welfare and satisfy them. If a person able to care for or protect old parents, a chaste wife, children, the spiritual master, Brahmins and other dependents, doesn't do so, he's considered dead, though breathing. So this great responsibility is there. We've received so much care and benefit. Now we have a debt to our parents and other seniors. So in this way, Krishna consoled his parents, Vasudeva and Devaki, and then he approached his grandfather, Ugrasen, and announced that Ugrasen would now be the king of the Bhojas, which meant the king of all the other local dynasties as well. And Krishna and Balaram placed themselves as subjects of the king and pledged to uphold his rule. Various kings had all been scattered because of Kamsa's reign, but now they returned and they were nicely cared for, or honored, really. And the citizens of Mathura, because of the good government under the protection of Krishna and Balaram, felt completely satisfied and forgot all material miseries. They would see Krishna and Balaram on the street, nicely dressed, smiling, looking at the citizens with grace, and they'd be filled with loving ecstasy. So then Krishna and Balaram approached Nanda and Yashoda, who were also in Mathura at the time because Krishna was there. But now Nanda and Yashoda wanted to go back to Vrindavan, and before they left, Krishna similarly and Balaram spoke to them, honoring them and expressing great affection. Somehow we weren't able to be cared for by our own parents, but you acted as our parents. And you're like our real, you're, in fact, not like, you're our real father and mother. We know that you'll feel separation, but we're coming back soon. So they gave some gifts and sweet words, and Nanda Maharaj embraced them, and the Nanda and the cowherd boys returned to Vrindavan. So now Krishna is under the care of Vasudeva. Not exactly under his care, but they're, what's the word? Restored to the company of Vasudeva. Vasudeva gives the cows that he'd wanted to give at the birth of Krishna, but didn't have. Now he gives them, in fact. He'd only given them in his mind. And he arranged for Krishna and Balaram to be initiated into the chanting of the Gayatri Mantra by Gargamuni, the priest of the dynasty. And then Krishna and Balaram went to live for some time at the Gurukul of Sandipani Muni. This is in Ujjain, where Bhakti Maharaj established an ISKCON temple. Still the ashram of Sandipani Muni is there. And there they followed the regulative principles of for brahmacharis. And Sandipani Muni instructed them in various departments of knowledge, in the Vedic wisdom, in various philosophies, in the Upanishads, in Dharma Shastra, in politics and ethics and military science, because they were Kshatriyas, so they were supposed to know these things. And it's described that although he was teaching them, actually he was teaching them with knowledge he received from them. As the cloud gets water from the ocean and then rains it back down into the ocean, Sandipani Muni received knowledge from Krishna Balaram and then served as their teacher. They learned 64 arts in 64 days and nights, 1 day of instruction, and they would have it down. They'd be expert. All sorts of arts are mentioned. And then finally, it was time for them to leave the Gurukul, and upon leaving, it was their duty to offer dakshina, a gift to the spiritual master. This is the duty. If one attends a school or is under the care of the spiritual master, one should offer some gift, dakshina. So they asked Sandipani Muni, what can we do for you? The Muni consulted his wife, and they decided that they knew that these were not ordinary boys. So they asked for the return of their dead son, who drowned in the ocean. So they immediately went there to the place, Prapas Kshetra, and ordered the controlling deity of the ocean return the son. The ocean said, I don't have him. He was taken by some demon, Panchajana, who lives deep in the water. So Krishna found that demon and killed him, but the boy was not there. Uh, the ocean suggested he might have been devoured by the Panchajana demon and he's still within his belly, but Krishna, no, he's not. So then Krishna went to the place of Yamaraj and along with Balaram, and Yamaraj offered his service. How can I be of service to you? Then we want you to return the son of our teacher. So Yamaraj returned the boy, and Krishna and Balaram brought the boy back. And is there anything else we can do for you? You've done enough. I'm completely satisfied. What more can one want when one has disciples like you? And he offered them a blessing, especially to Krishna. Whatever you speak will be as eternally fresh as the instructions of the Vedas. They'll be honored. Your instructions will be honored everywhere. It will always stay fresh. So Prabhupada said, because of this blessing from their teacher, this Bhagavad Gita is always fresh and new and honored all over the world. So then Krishna and Balaram, on their chariot, traveled at great speed like the wind, sounds like the crashing of clouds. They returned to Mathura, and the residents who hadn't seen them for a long time felt joyful like a person who's regained lost property. And so the chapter ends. Any comments or questions? Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, thank you very much for such a soul-nourishing class.
I haven't did all we.
I was
haven't
observing.
Done anything. I just
No,
repeated what we heard.
it really was. I was observing the attitude of Krishna all across the 64 days. His submissiveness and all the other good qualities. I wanted to know your point on your views on this. What in your definition is being in somebody's shelter? Is it simply taking initiation? What are those consistent symptoms which tells that we are in somebody's shelter? How can we know that if we are in somebody's shelter or not? Like how Krishna was in his guru's shelter for all the 64 days and even post that. How can we bring in the same quality?
If someone is in someone's shelter? Of course, there's different shelter. The king, someone takes shelter of the king, and the king says, "Don't worry, I'll protect you." Someone marries, and the husband says, "I accept responsibility for you." Then it's very clear. Or one takes initiation from the spiritual master, so then it's clear. Now the disciple has duties toward the spiritual master. The spiritual master has duties toward the disciple. It's not something, what's the word, one has to speculate about. It's an established relationship. Now, unless you're taking initiation from someone who's no longer on earth because you belong to some unusual sect from South India. But in the normal course of things, the disciples say, "I accept you as my spiritual master." The spiritual master says, "I accept you as my disciple." And shelter is there.
Thank you, Maharaj. And also the quality that Krishna had to this intense desire of pleasing his guru. How can we bring in that?
How do we develop the intense desire to please the guru? Yeah. By appreciation of what we received. If we don't listen to the instructions of the spiritual master, don't take them seriously, we won't have so much eagerness to serve the spiritual master, or if we do, it will just be superficial. But Prabhupada said of his own case that he was serious about hearing from the spiritual master. He said, so now I'm serious about speaking or preaching what he heard from the spiritual master. By accepting wholeheartedly what we receive from the spiritual master, we become conscious of how indebted we are.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. My question is based on the parental dynamics that are happening here. Yashoda Mai, as far as I can tell, considered Yashoda Mai considered Krishna her own. She didn't consider that Krishna was a foster child or that she was raising him. It seems like maybe Nanda Maharaj had an idea that came and went, that maybe Krishna had something to do with Vasudev. But I'm wondering how did she perceive this? Now all of a sudden Krishna is not hers, and she leaves him behind. And
No, there's two kinds of relationship. One is on the basis of the physical body, and the other is on the basis of love. So on the basis of the physical body, Krishna was the son of Vasudeva and Devaki. But because of the intensity of the love of Nanda Yashoda, Krishna is better known as the son of Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj. Nanda, Yashoda, Nanda. Even in the material world, sometimes we adopt a child, and we don't think, this is just an adopted child. The foster parent develops full love and affection for the child, materially. Doesn't discriminate. No, this is not my real child. They think, this is my child. So, Krishna, of course, that's material, but spiritually, that's there in the relationship between Krishna Balaram and Nanda Yashoda, or Krishna and Nanda Yashoda, Rohini, of course. But even Yashoda Mai feels equal parental affection for Balaram, or full parental affection for Balaram. I think we can say that in the Western context, everything tends to be very limited in terms of family affection. These are my parents, these are my children, everybody else is kind of a relative of some sort, and that's how it's set up. But in an extended family, the affection is also extended. It's not that an uncle is somebody that you kind of visit once in a while in a distant town, but practically on the level of the parents, and sometimes even more than the parents. So these affectionate relationships are not so limited to just one line, one straight line. Is that okay? Yes. Well, there's a question here.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, we see one statement here in the chapter that it is an art to see the signs, which we can say this is auspicious and inauspicious. So, being as a practicing devotee here in our movement, how should we see these things?
We are
the followers of Hare Krishnas. So how do we see this type of things? Because coming from an Indian family background, our moms and fathers, they just follow these things. If you sneeze, don't go outside the house for 5-10 minutes. And if there's a black cat, cross the road, something like that. So how do we see, all these things?
Well, one thing is that if we're going to follow these things, then there's two kinds of omens. There's sort of popular omens, and then there's according to authoritative books. So we're more toward the authoritative books than just popular conceptions. The second thing is that we're less concerned with these things. For the devotee, everything is auspicious. Inauspicious or auspicious, everything is material life, everything is inauspicious. In spiritual life, everything is auspicious. That said, one may know something from these signs. One who knows the science can take it into account. Did I tell about the Panjika the other day? I did. That there's a Vaishnav Panjika. This time is auspicious for travel to the east, but this time is very inauspicious for travel to the east. This time you can travel north, but not west. And Pradumna Prabhu had a copy of that, but Prabhupada said, if you go by that, you can't do anything. So we're not so much concerned with these things. If you chant Hare Krishna, everything will be auspicious.
May I ask another question with permission? Maharaj, as we see, there is one ashrama in this material world, and this is all material designation. But these are material designation, varna and ashramas. So do we have varna and ashramas in spiritual world also?
Yes, it's mentioned, just like Madhu Mangal, he's a Brahmin, and Krishna is a Vaishya. So Madhu Mangal gives Krishna blessings.
Yeah.
And demands charity.
Yeah, ladus.
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 So there's Brahmins and Kshatriyas in the spiritual world. There's Vaishyas. Everything is there. But Grihastas are there.
Yeah.
But it's not out of necessity to organize things in terms of the modes of material nature, because there are no modes of material nature in the spiritual world. So it's only for Krishna's pleasure, for his pastimes.
Yes, I was thinking that because this sannyasa and brahmachari and these are meant for the spiritual elevation. And I was thinking if these things are in the spiritual world, whom they're going to preach, because everybody is a pure.
Yeah.
So in that things I was thinking.
So there's no need of all these things, but sometimes they're there for Krishna's pleasure.
Thank you.
Maharaj, I was wondering, in Krishna book we see how much the devotees serve each other very unreservedly. And I was wondering, I would also like to more unreservedly serve the devotees, but I have an inhibition that maybe my sadhana will suffer, because I've seen a lot of devotees that they're very great devotees and they serve and serve and serve, but maybe they never read, or their chanting is all throughout the day.
I'm sorry,
Sorry.
Your voice dropped.
Oh, sorry. That there's very great devotees that they serve the devotees constantly, but maybe their sadhana suffers. Maybe they never read, or their chanting is all throughout the day. So I was wondering, is it selfish just to think of our sadhana as foremost, or is one stage more mature? Is it just a matter of different personalities?
Yeah, we have to adjust things. If we serve all the devotees, we may get a lot of help in the things we need to do. That's one thing. But let me think just for a moment. We should try to serve the devotees. To serve the Madbhakta Puja Vyadika. Prabhupada quoted that the service to the Madbhakta Puja Vyadika, that service to the devotee is better than service to Krishna. So the more we can serve the devotees, the better it is. But it doesn't mean that now I won't chant my rounds, now I won't do it, just serve the devotees. And everything becomes chaotic. But we should try to arrange our life in such a way that we can happily serve the devotees and still sustain our prescribed duties. So you have to adjust. Is that okay?
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Excuse me just for a moment. But even sometimes our prescribed duties can be secondary. If you're worshiping the deity, you can stop all the deity worship to serve a devotee. You're worshiping the deity, and a devotee comes, you can stop everything. Serve the devotee and then continue, then return to the deity. The Vaishnava is more important than Krishna himself in Krishna's estimation. Yes.
So it was, today we read that Krishna says, if you don't serve your parents, it's like you're like a dead body. And then we have some instructions that will take us away from the service of our parents in their old age. And how do we balance?
Devarshi bhutaptarnanam patrinam nakinkaram nayam. What is that? Rani Narajan. If one engages takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to engage in his service, all one's debts are paid. All one's debts are paid. So as far as possible, we try to satisfy our parents and see to other debts. But if one takes shelter of Krishna to serve Krishna, everything else can be secondary. And of course people say, you're not serving your parents, you're not. But just by way of a mundane example, if you sacrificed, if you left your parents to serve the country, they would think that you're a great man, right? That he even sacrificed his duties to his parents to serve the nation. They would think that you're great. But if you leave aside the service of your parents to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then they think that you're a rascal. So their understanding is cloudy. Principle is for a greater purpose, I can leave aside the lesser responsibilities. As far as possible, I try to satisfy those, but the higher responsibility to take. Therefore, Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityajya. You can give up all other duties just to satisfy me. Yes.
I wanted to ask about this sentence here. I therefore give
Ask
you.
with the microphone closer.
Yes. The point here is that the benediction of Gargamuni to Krishna, that whatever you speak will remain ever eternally fresh as the instructions of the Vedas.
Sandipani Muni.
Sandipani Muni, yes. And so for me, I just want to admit that the instructions of the Vedas, like that didn't,
Not so fresh for you.
Yes. And that reference is for me.
But for those who study the Vedas, they're eternally valid, they're eternally a source of knowledge. The Vedas are still honored even by those who don't read them. So in that sense. Yeah.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
Um,
And in another sense, he's offering benedictions to Krishna. But what benedictions can you offer? Prabhupada gave an example that there was some village woman, and somebody, the governor or the king, helped her. She had some real need, and the the governor came and solved her problem. So she was so delighted that she said, "I bless you to become chief of police." Because in her experience, the chief of police was like the biggest man she could think of. I bless you to become chief of police.
He thought it was a downgrade.
Yeah, it's obviously a lower position, but in her estimation, this was a blessing.
I was wondering about this sentence here where Ugrasena, Krishna says, being cursed by Yayati, the kings of the Yadu dynasty may not occupy the throne.
Yayati had various sons, and Yayati had gotten the benediction that he could live on and enjoy sense gratification. And so he was doing that in exchange for the youth of his sons, right? Yeah, he said, if one of he wanted to enjoy sense gratification, but he was getting old. So if one of your sons will take on your old age, then you can have sense gratification. Sex, you can go on enjoying sex as much as you like. So then he asked his sons will you exchange? Then I'm not going to exchange. So he cursed them. You're not obeying your father. You're not pleasing your father. Only one son, Puru. Puru agreed. Puru agreed. So the Yadu, but Yadu didn't agree because Yadu, the other sons, they didn't agree because we don't want to get old. Because you want to enjoy sex into your old age. We have to be old prematurely. I'm not for that. So they put their own interests first. But Yadu wasn't in that category. He also was unwilling, but he was unwilling because Kṛṣna was meant to appear in his dynasty as we say in America. Kṛṣna was meant to appear in his dynasty, and so he was unwilling to block that. So then he was cursed also, and therefore the statement here that the Yadus couldn't become the kings. The history is there in Bhagavatam.
Krishna Maharaj, with Sanapani Muni's request, it seems like, in one way, it seems a bit of a material request. But on the other hand, is he withholding some information about his son, like that?
There's no indication that information is withheld. It appears like a material request. So we can, two thoughts. One is that in Krishna's pastimes, the teacher is playing like a teacher, and he's a family man, and he has natural desires of this sort, and his wife especially. We ask for our son back. So that's natural. From another point of view, it's the arrangement of Krishna's pastime energy to show Krishna's glories. Krishna can perform these wonderful pastimes. There's no indication that there's something special about the son that we didn't know. I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I was just thinking because he goes to try and find him, but then
Mm-hmm.
Krishna goes to try and find him, but then he ends up not finding him, and then he tracks him all the way down to Yamaraj. So I was curious if
there's a backstory,
Yeah.
and I haven't seen a backstory.
One more question. Nanda Maharaj and Yashoda wanted to go back to Vrindavan. Is there anything more that could be said about their wanting?
Yeah, there's a lot that's said about that, I think, by the acharyas, but that's kind of what I remember, is that they've said a lot. I don't remember what they said. I didn't receive that benediction that whatever I'd learn, I'd remember for the rest of my life. Let's see. There is, well, it would take me a while to look and see, but yeah, there's an extensive discussion. It's discussion in Brihad Bhagavatamrita also. Why, how? Yashoda, as I remember, is still in Vrindavan, actually. She stays in Vrindavan, but Nanda Maharaj goes with the cowherd men. That's what I remember elsewhere. But in any case, the Prabhupada said the arrangement was reached by mutual agreement between, and part of it was that if Krishna didn't come back and Nanda Maharaj didn't come back, then the rest of the Brajbasis would expire on the spot. And Krishna also charged Nanda with reassuring the Brajbasis that yes, Krishna will come back. He's promised, he's honest, he'll come. And so in that way, the Brajbasis were able to maintain hope that Krishna would return. Yeah, these are some of the points that were made. And then there's a whole description of what happens when Nanda Maharaj goes back. This is a commentary to Brihad Bhagavatamrita. Yes. So the next chapter is about that. Next chapter talks about that. Ah, right. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and Krishna returns with Nanda Maharaj in his bhava manifestation. We'll hear about that tomorrow. Oh, look at that. We're so late. Should we have some kirtan? Wasn't watching the clock. Who's leading? You're leading. Okay, you're on. Oh, I can give you these.
प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंदा
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare.
Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pariprajaka Stotra Sri Srimad A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sham Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai Navadip Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Shamanamai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. Very nice. Thank you all. Hare Krishna.